All right, and so we're going to be taking a look at another verse that happens to contradict Jesus Christ. And so here is John 2:15, Jesus Christ himself. So Jesus fashioned a whip out of ropes and drove them all out of the temple, even the sheep and the oxen, along with the temple treasurers. And he scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. Okay, so Jesus comes into this place of worship and starts destroying the place and whipping people. Okay, does that sound legal under any law system that you've ever heard of? No, right? And so here is a verse that directly contradicts Jesus Christ. Uh, Supposedly, the Apostle Paul writes in Romans 13:1, "Let everyone be subject to governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God." Okay? Um, so understanding that while Christians believe in good and God, we also understand that evil exists and evil is going out in the world. And Christians, we are opposing it, right? And you see Christians, even Jesus Christ himself here, battling against evil and corruption. Is Jesus obeying the law system or governing authorities? No. Okay? And so when you're looking at verses in the New Testament, you can tell, right, when it contradicts Christ, right? Well, Christians, people who are of the faith of the Christ, uh, are followers of the Christ first and foremost. And so if they run into a contradiction in which a verse contradicts Christ, right, you should seek another translation because the author has, in this case, right, the Bible over the 2,000 plus year period in which it has existed has been in the hands of a lot of governing authorities and rulers. And understanding, right, while Jesus is opposing, in his time, he's opposing corrupt rulers and breaking the law in order to reveal them and bring about the prophecies that were meant to be brought about through Christ. In this case, one of them is the destruction of Jerusalem. Understanding that, right, Christians, we do not always follow rulers. We do not always follow laws, right? The only law that you are subject to is God. And understanding that is extremely important because you shouldn't be really letting your mind be captivated saying, oh, I can't do that, oh, I can't do that, if a law is fully corrupt and it is creating evil, right? If an evil ruler was to come about, for example, right, obviously the evil ruler is not ordained by God or established by God, right? He's been using evil methods to usurp power, right? And so understanding this is important because just blindly believing that you have to follow laws or things like that, that is opposite to the Christ. It is opposite to what the Christ was doing. So taking a look at the actions of the Christ is a very, very good idea to do so that you can model Christ Jesus and the prophets. And so when you see a verse like this, it's obviously a poor translation. Someone had an incentive, right? They wanted you to obey people in the places of worship and not question what they said, things like that. So understanding this, right, you should be able to recognize this. That being said, right, Christians, we follow God and God alone. We're not subject to laws. That doesn't mean, out of respect, we're not going to follow a good law. But when a nation has become fully corrupt, you see Jesus Christ rising up, and you will see all the prophets rising up to battle against the corruption and evil and do whatsoever it takes to drive it out. And in the case of some of the warrior prophets, this is extremely graphic stuff, right? Joshua, Maccabees, right? Maccabees were 4 books of the Bible that were removed around 1600 AD by people who believed they were too graphic in the Bible. They depict actual warfare, right? So understanding this is important because it's very easy to fall into the mindset that Christianity or people who are of the faith of the Christ, it's going to be easy. Well, none of the actions that you see of Christ or the apostles or the prophets is easy, right? Christ had to summon a whole lot of courage, knowing that they would get him, that he would be crucified and die at the hands of these men in order to accomplish the great deeds that he did, and become, right, the head of the faith of the Christ. And so understanding that is important. Watch out for verses like this that just tell you to submit, right? Christians, we only submit to God, and God tells us, be good, be light. This plays into letting yourself being weakened by the faith, right? If you are going through extreme times where people are abusing the system, or people are hard for people to identify while remaining politically correct, things like that, well, if you have to obey the laws, you are at a serious disadvantage, and it is likely that you will lose the battle, the fight, and even the war, right? This also will play into smaller circumstances in your life where you should be thinking freely, thinking, I could do that, but that doesn't really seem like something I would like to do, and so instead I'm going to think of another solution, right? So understanding the difference and how this will play into critical, important situations where people are being hurt or things like that, it's going to be the foundation of the Christian faith, right? The faith of the Christ, because what Christ saw was people being hurt and damaged by Romans and corrupt religious teachers and things like that, and he decided to break the law and stand up to them, right? So making sure to not allow yourself to be at disadvantage, right? If you're with God, if you're standing with God, are you at a disadvantage? No. And so making sure to understand this is important, right? God came to the prophets to empower them, not to weaken them. And so you are not permitted to be weakened by the faith. That does not mean that the faith of the Christ, right, the majority of what you see Christ doing is going around preaching love, mercy, compassion, but he also summons the courage to stand up and accomplish his goal, which was what God had commanded him to do, which was the prophecies that were fulfilled through him and his crucifixion.